What's up YouTube, it's Jackal Gold Kick, and I'm here with Acid Roots, and we're going to be doing a video collaboration reviewing the album Hellterskkkelter EP by rapper Esham. Now this album came out in 1992, and me and Acid Roots are going to be reviewing it. Esham is a rapper from Detroit, Michigan. He's one of the forefathers of horrorcore rap. He's a horrorcore rapper. He was a huge influence on Eminem, ICP, and Juggalo rap. He did a lot for horrorcore rap, especially the Detroit type of horrorcore that Eminem and ICP and Juggalos from there do. I've always liked Esham. I think he's a pretty good rapper, and I think he has some really good music. So yeah, let's review this album, Hellterskkkelter EP, that came out in 1992. There's 4 songs on this album total, so let's get into reviewing this album. The first song on the album is called Hellterskkkelter, which is the self-titled track of the album name. I'm not really a fan of this song, Hellterskkkelter. I think it has really good rapping, and I think the lyrics are pretty good and the chorus is okay, but my biggest problem with this song is the production really isn't that great. Considering that this album came out in 1992, one of the issues with this album mostly is it does have dated, very old school kind of production since it came out such a long time ago in 1992, and years later this kind of beat just sounds very outdated. I'm not a fan of the production on the song Hellterskkkelter overall. I like a part of the beat, which is the drum part, but I'm overall not a fan of this track. In terms of the subject matter on the song, he's mainly just talking about horrorcore type stuff and rapping and things like that, and just horrorcore type stuff. That's what I got from it subject matter wise. So that's what I think of the first song, Hellterskkkelter. Not a fan of it overall. So track 2 on the album is called Rocks Off, which is a song about sex and having sex with women. I'm not really a fan of this song Rocks Off either. It has the exact same issue that the first song did. The beat on here is really not that great. I'm not a fan of this production. It's just boring. It feels really outdated, and I just don't care for the song overall. It does have good rapping and it does have good lyrics. I'm not really a fan of the chorus, so I don't think it's that great. But yeah, overall, I'm not a fan of the song Rocks Off. The biggest issue with this track is the production. Yeah, not a fan of this track overall. Didn't really do much for me. Didn't really care for it. So the third track on the album, track 3, is called B4 or BE-4. I don't know if it's B4 or BE-4, but whichever one it is. This is the third track on the album. The subject matter of this song, BE4 or BE-4, is pretty much about horrorcore type rap. Basically, horrorcore rap is what the subject matter of the song is. I'm not a fan of this song either. It's the shortest song on the album. Not a fan of this track. I mean, once again, the rapping and lyrics is good on this song, much like the first 2 tracks, but it has the exact same issues that the first 2 songs did. The production on the song is really not that great. I didn't really care for the beat here. It just really isn't that good. I think the production's pretty poor on this song. I just found it boring and outdated, and it just didn't really make for an appealing song. And that's the biggest problem with this track and the other songs I talked about, is the beats themselves. They're outdated, they're boring, and this track has the same issue. So I'm not a fan of the track BE-4. Didn't care for it much. So the last song on the album, track 4, is called Devil's Night. The subject matter of the song Devil's Night is pretty much horrorcore type rap. Basically goes into horrorcore type rap, horror type stuff. That's what the subject matter of this particular song is. Now, I think this is the best song on the album. This isn't a song I love and I'll go back to like that. I do think Esham has way better songs out there, and this isn't a song I'm gonna go back to all the time. But out of all the songs on this album, I think this is the best song on the project. It has a better beat than the other songs by far. I definitely like the beat on this one. I think what really helps the beat on this song, Devil's Night, is I like the guitar that he has in the beat. It sounds really cool. The chorus is pretty good. I do like the rapping from Esham, and I do like the lyrics in this track. So this is a pretty good song. It is the best track on the album, but it's not a song I absolutely love. It kind of has the same issues as the other songs has, where it just feels somewhat dated and very old school in the way this type of hip hop sounds, but it still is a pretty decent song, I think, and it's definitely better than the other tracks. So that's what I thought of all the songs on the Hellterskkkelter EP by rapper Esham. So overall, what I think of the Hellterskkkelter EP by rapper Esham, I'm going to give this album a 3 out of 10. It does have good rapping on it, and it does have good lyrics, and I think there is at least one good song on here, which is Devil's Night. But other than that, I'm not really a fan of the project overall, because the first 3 songs I'm not a fan of, and Another issue with the album is the production really isn't that great. The production was mostly fine on Devil's Night, but for the other songs, the production just really isn't that great. It feels boring, it feels outdated, and it just hasn't really aged that well. I mean, I didn't hear this album back when it came out because I was born in 1999, but I'm just not really a fan of this project overall. I've heard better from Esham, like his album Bruce Wayne Gotham City, or even his album Boomin' Words from Hell had some songs in there that were better. To be fair, this album did come out in 1992, so some music from that time period will fall into the realm of possibly not holding up or not aging well or just being dated by a certain point because of how old it is and how certain type of hip-hop was made back then, so I will be fair with that. But I think even around that time when Esham was making music, he made better songs than a lot of the stuff he did on this EP. Songs like Devil's Groove and Amen Another Sin, those are two really good Esham songs, and those were made in the 90s type decade. And he was able to make those good songs with pretty good production. I don't know why he couldn't do that for this Hellterskkkelter EP. The only song worth checking out is Devil's Night. But other than that, I wasn't a fan of this EP overall and probably wouldn't return to it. I think there's much better music out there from Esham. Songs like Amen Another Sin, Devil's Groove, American Psycho, Where My Bitch At, Fuck the Fame, stuff like that, Co-America. Those are much better songs by Esham. If you heard this album, let us know what you think of it. And if you know who Esham is, let us know what you think of him as a rapper. I do like him as a rapper. I want to make that clear though, is that even though I'm not really a fan of this project, besides one song, I am a fan of Esham. I do think he makes good music, but this is just one of his particular projects and pieces of music that I just didn't really care for that much. But I think Esham is a pretty good rapper, and I do think he's underrated, and I think he doesn't get talked about enough because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't really have like the Slim Shady Eminem type stuff. You wouldn't have the Juggalo rap, and I think it's a shame that ICP and Eminem are a lot more known than Esham is. A lot of people don't even really know who Esham is when you bring him up, and I think that's a shame because this guy was the forefather of horrorcore, one of the forefathers of horrorcore rap in Detroit. He influenced Eminem and ICP, and he deserves to be way more known because of what he influenced and what he brought into the game. So yeah, that's all I got to say overall on my part for this review for the Hellterskkkelter album by Esham. That's all I got to say on my part. Peace.
What it do, folks? This is Acid Roots, and I'm here with Jackal Goldkick, and we're going to review the Esham project, Hellterskkkelter. So, a little bit of backdrop about Esham is he's a rapper from Detroit, Michigan that was kind of one of the initial fellows that helped kick off horrorcore and also a little bit of rap rock he did as well. So he was good with that, and he helped inspire Insane Clown Posse and later on Eminem. He's been around since the 80s. I mean, he's still relatively young. He's still kind of in his 40s, but it's interesting that he kicked off like a lot of genres so soon and was able to really have like a pretty great job of doing it at the same time because really like production to me was kind of odd before Dr. Dre dropped the Chronic, but I definitely feel like this is Esham was another very revolutionary rapper that kind of helped move along some of these concepts that would be developed and manifest and morph into like the horrorcore genre. So he deserves a lot of credit here with doing this, especially as far back as like 1990 and 1991 and stuff when really most folks were still kind of messing with Ice Cube and Public Enemy and those type folks. And really, to note that about this project, this does kind of have like a slight fuck the world kind of mentality and such, where it kind of has a lot of that you would expect from like an Ice Cube album. Maybe in a light sense, kind of political talk, but it reminds me in some senses where it is horrorcore, but it's also kind of food for thought horrorcore because I wasn't expecting that kind of concept with like the Ice Cube and Public Enemy type commentaries. That's interesting just because it's from 1993 and that was kind of more kind of talked about back in those days. So you get a taste of that. But there's not really singles on this project, but I do kind of feel like, I guess I could talk a little bit. I think I kind of covered most of this, but some of the stuff that Esham was doing around this time was he appeared on Insane Clown Posse's debut album, The Carnival of Carnage, and he also, with a couple buddies, he made the group Natas, which had an album called Life After Death, which had some controversy attached to it. But then he also dropped in 1993, along with this project, he dropped the album "Kill the Fetus" or "Kill the Fetus," which is a pretty heralded album. I think I want to say it's in horrorcore. I'm gonna take a look. Um, yeah, it's horrorcore and rap rock. So this is like a pretty large album, kind of like Brother Lynch Hung's Season of the Sickness. These were some of the effectual, real kind of showcasing albums for that. It was pretty heralded album, Kill the Fetus, and then later that year he dropped this project, Helter Skelter. So to kind of talk about this project, the thing about it kind of is 4 songs, and you get like a good taste of this. Like, I feel like the only real horrorcore song in that much degree was Devil's Night, which is also the name of a D12 album. I think that took inspiration possibly from this song. But Devil's Night is kind of like a dark holiday in Detroit, Michigan, where you kind of engage in like some kind of violent mischief. But it is a pretty crazy song, at least for 1993. I definitely like the kind of dark tint of that and kind of rap rock ish kind of vibe of it. It just really felt pretty vintage and great production for early 90s. Just because you really look after it, like most folks were still kind of doing like the boom bap sound and kind of more like East Coast rap kind of sound from like 1991 and 1988 and such. But it was just good to kind of get these relative, rather good production type beats on here that had something more engaging to kind of mess with. I just felt like the real kind of gloomy and kind of eerily creepy kind of vibes of Devil's Night really worked real well. Rocks Off is a nice kind of juggalo song for like the ladies and stuff. I really felt like basically just a sex song, but it does a good job of just kind of having that vibe. I think it's definitely original in that sense, because I'll tell you, most rappers' songs for the ladies back in those days were not quite as like gloomy and kind of murky sounding. So it's definitely credit, just because Insane Clown Posse and like Brother Lynch and those type folks would do that later on, but this was definitely original, just in the sense because it just gave off a real kind of juggalo and kind of murky kind of vibe that was pretty accurate. It's pretty stellar song, just in how kind of moody the production kind of is on here. And then Helter Skelter, the title track, is basically like a rap rock song that does pretty well. This is another Juggalo song to me. It just felt really kind of rather creepy, and just in like a rock sense, really felt like something you could listen to in the fall, September, October, November. And definitely outstanding for 1993. I just have to say that this was pretty much ahead of its time. I mean, most people in 1993, you have to understand, were listening to basically just Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, with maybe touches of Ice Cube and Public Enemy in there, and those type folks. Maybe like a few others like Wu-Tang Clan and some, I can't really think of too many, but like this is definitely like I would definitely give people credit who have messed with this project since like 1993, 1995 or so, that this was pretty much ahead of its time in terms of the concept of how the trailblazing of this project and like Insane Clown Posse and some of those folks, Brother Lynch Hung kind of did between like 1991 and 1995, and just the early days of horrorcore. It's definitely interesting to kind of get some of these moments. So it kicks a lot of ass. The only song I really didn't like on this project was just B4. I liked the beat on this song. It was just a brief 1 minute 30-second song, but I just felt like the lyrics were just not quite catchy enough to really. All it was just a song about contemplating committing suicide, which I would have liked maybe just a different kind of spooky kind of vibe of something that it could have been. Like the production really felt good, but I felt like just designating the song purely to committing suicide felt kind of like an awkward kind of form of chance or choice, I would say. But that's really the only dud on this project. So I'm going to give this album me like in 3 out of 4. I'm going to give this project an 8 out of 10, just because the sheer originality and just trailblazing concept that it kind of gave was just really kind of good. Because most of the time I don't like too many records before like 1995 or 4 or so. I mean, minus like Dr. Dre's The Chronic and Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, there's just not an abundance of early 90s records I like, but this is definitely one of them. So the social score, I wouldn't really give it a social score, just because it didn't really have any singles, and Esham's very much underground, but I felt like he still trailblazed enough to be able to give him credit for that. So these are popular songs that can be played around your homies and that type stuff. and ladies that you're hanging out with, I would have to kind of say that it just doesn't have like the instant, oh, I know this song because I've, it's just kind of, it's a lot more low key than you might wonder. So that's pretty good. I mean, Esham's kept up current. He has quite a few albums in terms of the future. He has quite a few projects, so he's still doing stuff now. He's been doing stuff since the 80s, so he's got plenty of stuff. And it'd be interesting to wonder how many of these projects continue to kick ass. But this is definitely a good one and worth picking up.